My name is Andy Pham. I'm with the Illinois Small Business Development Center at the Joseph Center, and I'll be your moderator for today. Our speaker for today is covering the topic, Winning the Talent War, Keys to Attract and Retain in Today's Tough Market. Our speaker is Michelle. She's been letting people into the Zoom. Miss Michelle Arentz, owner of Lazarus Learning LLC. And her topic description is, the Great Resignation has turned the tables on many business leaders when it comes to attracting and retaining talent. When even large, well-established organizations are struggling, it can be extra challenging for small businesses to compete. Knowing key trends and indicators in the market can make the difference between finding, hiring, and keeping great employees, or making costly mistakes and losing out. This session explores what current research tells us workers are really looking for, and how small business leaders can stand out from the competition by incorporating these elements into their strategies, operations, and company cultures. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Michelle, and she will lead the session. After that, we'll have a Q&A, but please remember to keep your mics muted for the time being. And if you have any questions, put it in the chat for the time being, and we'll have a Q&A at the end. So hand this over to you, Michelle. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Andy. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. I'm really excited to be here, and many thanks to all the folks who made this possible to have this wonderful conference and sessions like this today. Yes, I am Michelle Arentz. I am the owner of Lazarus Learning. I operate in the world of being a fractional chief learning officer and a trusted learning and development partner. I've been in this space for over 20 years. And so today I'm really pleased to bring to the table for you some insights and oversights in terms of what the heck is going on when it comes to this talent war that we're really in right now, and how to get a bit of a competitive edge. And it's really true from what Andy was saying in the introduction. Don't kid yourself that even fairly substantial companies that you would think would be doing amazing things and have all the money in the world to throw at it, don't kid yourself that they are all on board or doing it right either. But in this space today, what I really want to share with you all is what you can do, especially in the smaller business space, where it can be extra challenging because you don't necessarily have all those resources at your disposal like the bigger groups do. So I'm going to try to make this interactive. We've got a lot of ground to cover. I am a very curious person. I have to tell you, my three core values in life, personally and professionally, are integrity, curiosity, and creativity. So curiosity is going to come right out of the gate with everybody. I can't help myself. So I'm going to start asking some questions just to get the ball rolling and get a feel for what's going on. Now, if you are not necessarily a business owner, business leader in your own right, think of these questions in terms of maybe people you're advising or working for or working with, and what you think their answer in this space might be. So I'm going to start right out of the gate with a polling question here. So when it comes to attracting great candidates, what level of concern does your business have regarding attracting great candidates? Which one of these applies to you, ladies and gentlemen? Just so I get a nice feel for where we all coming from here.
I was hoping I could take the poll too, but I can't.
I know, it's okay. It's all good. Listen, I'm so used to I don't usually get to have a co-pilot on these, so I'm super stoked that you're here at all, Andy. It's pretty exciting for me, so thank you for that. All right, we'll close this poll out in a second here, and we'll just see what everybody's thinking, and we'll share it around, and we'll make a go of it. All right, I'm going to close it in 3, 2, 1. Boop. And I'll share the results. So here's what you guys said. Little bit on them, not really concerned at all. Congratulations. Cool. That's a nice space to be in if you can, but it looks like the bulk of you are very concerned, and a few of you are freaking out about it, understandably so. So I think you're in the right space today to be getting a handle a little bit on some of what's going on here. So thank you for that. And like that wasn't enough, I now have a follow-up question that I want to ask, because, you know, I'm just in that space. I'm going to look for where all my other polls are. Yeah, poll number 2. Here we go. Follow-up question to that. How would you describe your turnover rate in the past 6 to 8 months? How would you describe your turnover rate in the past 6 to 8 months? Where are you guys at there? Love to know that one too. Get a feel for where we're all coming from, the lay of the land before we dive in. Great. So a couple more seconds here. I'm just, yeah, I'm curious. I'm nosy. I like to know these things. All right. See where we're at. Okay, and I'll close the poll in 3, 2, 1. And bingo, we're done. All right, let's see these results. So nobody said way higher. Okay, that's good. That's good. Higher than normal or expected. Looks like that was our leader here, about the same. Some of you are even lower and some of you haven't had turnover at all. That's awesome. Okay, but it looks like the bulk of us are kind of in a space where turnover is happening and it may be a concern. All right, very cool. Thank you guys for sharing on that level. I really appreciate it as we move ahead. Well, here's the deal. This probably isn't news to anybody, but I think this really captures the essence of it quite nicely. You know, work is on trial and the verdict is in. And the pandemic really didn't light the fire, so to speak, but it fanned the flames. Or the other way that I often put it in conversations I'm having with business leaders is, you know, there were cracks in the system before 2020. It's just that they widened a lot in the last couple of years and people kind of stepped back, took a look at it and said, nah, this doesn't really work anymore. Okay. So that is a big reality check for us in the work world. I don't think this is news to anybody. I don't think this is rocket science. I always say that I don't deal in rocket science. A, I'm not that smart. And B, I don't think the world needs to be that complicated. So this is probably not news to you, but I think it's something that we really need to stop and think about. Because if we don't, we're really missing out on a key element of what's gone on in the last couple of years. And I think it's going to continue to go on for some time to come. And with that in mind, I don't know if this is, something that you realize or not, but 1 in 5, that's 20% of workers quit their job in just the last 6 months of 2021 alone. Why? If you guys would share in chat with me, I would love to hear what are your theories or reasons, or what do you think is going on that many people walked away? What do you think are the reasons why people quit? Look for the exit signs. Not appreciated, David says. I like that. Yeah. What other options might we have? Why else would people quit? You just saying found a higher paying job. And I'm assuming the number 1 means number 1 reason why they did it. No work or family balance because you don't make enough to even live on. Yeah, definitely. Oh, here it comes in fast and furious, right? Open to better opportunities, too many alternatives, more flexible opportunities. We're back to work-life balance. Yeah. Starting own business for flexibility. Yeah, we're gonna touch on that. Trying to start their own businesses, salary, back to that money thing again. Yeah. Changing workspaces, not sure why they left, maybe fear of COVID. Yeah, that's part of it. You guys are all on the money. These are all in the mix, absolutely. There's a number of factors and reasons why people left. Yeah, oh yeah, that childcare thing, that's a doozy. And that continues to be a major challenge. And interesting, Earl, poor onboarding procedures. Oh, wow. I like how sharp your pencil is on this one. Absolutely. That seems like one of those minute details out there, but it's not. It's a big dang deal. They will make their minds up very quickly and right on the front end. Lots of women had to leave for childcare and they're still out of the game. Yeah. Lots of people felt that remote work was better. And again, those reevaluating priorities, you guys are awesome. You totally get it. Again, I don't think this is particularly shocking or rocket science for anybody in the mix. So thank you guys for sharing all that. Now, here's a kind of a related question. Some of you touched on this a little bit, but I'd like to know what you think of this one. So do you think that would you agree with the statement that money is the number 1 reason people quit their job? Let's see where you guys shake out on that. Money's the number 1 reason. It doesn't take much time to decide. So in 3, 2, 1, we are done. And poll and result survey says, oh, you guys are good. Okay, so most of you disagreed that money is the #1 driver. I'm very relieved to hear you say that. And you just saying in hospitality, chickens come back to roost, like poor business models. Yes, absolutely, they sure do. Here's the thing that actually a lot of business leaders are quite surprised about. Money is not the top leader. In fact, most people think that money is the leader. Now, I'm not saying that money isn't in the equation for certain people, and I'm not going to say that there aren't some people that money is indeed their #1 reason for, jumping ship and going elsewhere. I think there is an element of reality. But in the grand scheme of things, money is not really showing up, and this has been repeated in multiple surveys over the last couple of years. Not the top driver. There's a lot of other things going on in the mix that are making people really look around, reevaluate, and say, I want to go over there. I was actually doing a presentation this morning, and somebody who had joined in on that one had said, he's very frustrated because he was saying, well, I don't get it. Like, I've seen people who quit here, and especially with gas prices being what they are right now, it makes no sense. They're quitting for a couple bucks more, and they're driving even further away than they were when they were coming to work with us. I don't understand. Like, economically, they're not further ahead. And you can imagine that my answer to that was, money's not the issue. When people are going to quit you for $1 or $2 more an hour, money isn't the reason. It might be the excuse, and they might not want to be honest, or they don't feel open about telling you why that is. But the simple answer is, money particularly in that case, is not really the driver. There's a lot of other stuff going on. And the good news about this is there's a lot of things that small businesses can do to make their workplaces more attractive, to get the right people in the door and then keep them without necessarily having to spend a boatload more on paying people. We're not going to chase the dollar to get the job done. So, I mean, yes, there's a minimum point at which people definitely need to be paid to make a decent living. You'll never get an argument out of me on that one. But outside of that, there's a lot more going on here for folks. So I think that's important for us to understand. Now, this book came out well ahead of anything to do with pandemic and what's going on in our lives. So it's an interesting, hidden reasons, or the less expected reasons why people will quit their jobs, and obviously things you can do about it. So the couple things at the top: job not as expected. Hey, what you sold me on that posting and that interview is not what I got when I came in the door. Okay, huge dissatisfaction right out of the gate when you very quickly discover that what you were sold on is not what you got. We know how we feel about that. Item number 2, mismatch between the job and the person. We didn't hire right. Boy, howdy, that is a hugely expensive mistake, isn't it? It's very painful for everybody involved, and it costs a lot of money, because now that you've got a mismatched person in that job, there's a whole lot of stuff that has to happen in order to correct it, even if that correction means you've got to get that person out the door. Okay, that's a big, messy mistake. And there's a lot of things that can be done on the front end to mitigate that risk, but that's a huge risk. Third up, and I'm not sure that these are exactly in any particular order here, but not enough coaching or feedback. And we'll touch on that a little bit later too. People are just not, I have no idea how I'm doing, and nobody's telling me how I'm doing. I don't know. Or I only hear feedback when I'm being yelled at, which is a big problem. I put in blue these 4 bottom ones because these are things that we are very specifically going to touch on this afternoon together. Not enough growth or advancement opportunities. I'm going to talk about that. Feeling devalued and unrecognized. Big one. Big one. It's huge. Stress from the overwork and the lack of balance. Remember, this stuff came out before pandemic. Pandemic just, threw more gasoline on that fire, right? And the lost trust and confidence in leadership. Okay. And at the end of the day, leaders are tied into everything that's going on here, because business leaders are the ones who make the decisions about what's going to happen and how it's going to happen and how things get handled. And then they task other people to do it. So leadership touches everything. So we're going to be touching on these things in this space together today. So, I just want to say, like, hey, and a lot of these things don't have to, these things are not tied to the paycheck specifically at all. These are all these other factors that are in play that I think, you can start to realize that it makes sense. Here's some other, this is from a few different, I'm always looking at the research, I'm always looking at the numbers, and there's lots of surveying and data going around now. So this is an amalgamation of a few different sources, reliable sources that I found. But here's some top exit reasons that came out of polling in the last month or two. Okay, so they're quite recent. 49% of people cited a lack of healthy work-life balance as a reason to find the exit. Again, you guys were on par, you knew that, no surprises there. And this is not necessarily remote work. We're just talking like, hey, it's not always work. 56% of people said poor management. There's an old adage out there, right? People tend not to quit their company. They tend not to quit their job. They tend to quit their manager. I myself 3 times in my career have quit the manager or the management. So, can we all not think of a time where we had a boss that we really wish we didn't? Maybe we currently have them now, right? 57% of people said that feeling disrespected at work was a reason to get out the door. Like, hey, they're not acknowledging what I'm doing. Disrespected could fall into a few different buckets. This could potentially also be a diversity and inclusion concern. But there, I'm not feeling like this is a safe, welcoming place that appreciates me for who I am and what I do. That's a big driver. Yeah, 59% of people did say low pay, but notice it's not at the top. Not at the top. 62% of people cited toxic company culture. Culture touches on a lot of things in a business, and we'll explore that a little bit today here as well. Okay, but toxic company culture, like, hey, I've had enough of being in a place where, and frankly, a toxic company culture would most likely include all the criteria that I've just listed so far, right? This is going to be the kind of place where there isn't balance, management is not doing a great job, people are being disrespected. Chances are that, the pay isn't there. Although frankly, even if the pay is there, people are still going to look for the exit signs. And then a really big one that's percolating up, one of my, near and dear to my heart as somebody who comes from the learning and development side of the house, lack of advancement opportunities. I don't see a future here. There's nowhere for me to go. Okay, or you're not invested in me. I'm just checking the chat. Yeah, and Jeannie had said amen to that. I'm sorry, Jeannie, I didn't catch which one you said that to. Or maybe all of them. I apologize, I didn't catch at what point your comment came through on the chat. So if you want to clarify, that's cool. But yeah, a lot of these things are tied together, right? These don't happen in a vacuum. And I could go on and on. There's also, other things that came up in the mix that I just didn't put in there. 42% said burnout. People were talking about lack of remote options, poor benefits, all kinds of things. Oh, culture is key. Yes. Yeah. Oh, people who leave their bosses, not their jobs. Thank you, Jeannie. Yes. And Earl, you're 100% right. Culture is key. And these things are all tied together. Everything that I'm saying here are elements of culture. And so we will explore that a little bit as well. So in this space of thinking about this, and again, whether it's where you work, or maybe it's, if it's an organization that you're doing some work for, I would be curious to know, out of all these factors, what's your sense of which one of these is driving the bus? What do you guys think is the most likely reason where you're at, or what you're seeing? Maybe if it's a client situation, if that helps. What do you think is going on there? I'm very curious to know what you guys think in this space. What are you seeing and hearing? Andy, you would be 100% right. Toxic culture is hard to deal with because it touches everything. It's everywhere. It's all of it. However, that doesn't mean that it can't be dealt with. It just means that it takes a lot of lift. So I'm just I'm watching the little bars, going back and forth here. I'll give you a few more seconds, see what you guys think. We've got a front runner here, I got to tell you, with a good runner up in views. This looks like a horse race, right? So I'm going to close the poll here in 3, 2, 1. Boom, we're done. And I'll share the results. Oh, and it ended up in a tie. Well, nose to nose. Here we go. So here's what you guys said. Top place, it was feeling disrespected or poor management, which could often, as we can imagine, go hand in hand anyway. Then our next up, we were in a 3-way tie, holy smokes, between that balance piece, the pay, and the development opportunities. And you guys cited culture as the lowest one. Okay, cool, interesting. Thank you guys for participating in that. And I'm just gonna double check the chat here. Sorry, Yuta, I'm telling you, I'm asking you, when I'm asking these questions, you can think of it, depending on what your role is or how you want to approach this question, you can either think of it in terms of where you work specifically, if you're in a business leadership role, or if you're working with clients, what's the experience that what are you seeing and hearing when you're working with your clients? What is their business suffering? So I hope that gives a little clarity there. Thanks for asking about that. Yeah. So, there's a lot of different things in the mix. And unless an organization pays attention to what's going on there, they're going to be really hard pressed to even know, like, well, what are the factors? What is something that is driving people out the door? And what do we pay attention to so we can look for a fix? This is kind of like diagnostics, right? I mean, where is the pain? What kind of pain is it? So we know what we can go ahead and start treating it. But these are top reasons that keep coming up in surveys. So I think that's well worth paying attention to. And of course, some of those additional challenges that we know, and you guys touched on this earlier on in my question, we also recognize that in the last couple of years, an awful lot of people took early retirement. They retired probably sooner than they would have planned, possibly even wanted to, but they just completely stepped away from the space and said no. In some instances, as a smaller business, you might be able to entice them back, at least part-time. Some of those folks might find that, under the right circumstances, they might be interested and willing to maybe not necessarily do full-time work, but you might have an available pool there on the part-time side with some retirees who just would rather ultimately maybe be semi-retired, not fully retired. So think about that. The caregiving thing, as we've acknowledged, still a huge deal. This is still a really big problem across the country. There's such a shortage of childcare spaces. The cost of childcare is insane. The other thing is there's also that caregiver space of not necessarily children, but there's also, am I caring for another relative or somebody else? Is there somebody in my household that I have to look after in some capacity? And Pew Research was showing that 48% of people in a recent report in March said that when they had children under the age of 18 in the household, that was a significant factor in why they stopped working, because it was the load was just too much to take. COVID has certainly been a risk factor. This roller coaster ride that we seem to be on these days of I don't like these movie sequels. I saw the movie last summer. It was great. We all took our masks off. We felt confident. And then we had to put them all back on again. And then we took them off and then we put them on and we don't know what to do anymore. Certainly frontline workers definitely feel that risk of exposure. And recognizing that an awful lot of people in America can't ever work remotely. Your Amazon driver, your UPS driver, your postal worker cannot get their job done sitting at a desk at home. Most of them, right? They have to be out there. So that's a reality. Part of the challenge around that goes to benefits, things like, do we have enough sick days? If I do get sick or I'm trying to recover or I need time off for certain things. And of course, the risk of exposing others. I don't want to bring this home to anybody who might be in a condition to not handle it. Yeah, and Cheryl, I think I agree with you. I think a lot of the things that we were just touching on and the previous reasons for, they all, sooner or later, they're all part and parcel of the cultural aspect, 100%. And even when you look at these factors that I'm talking about here, they can, to a certain degree, in their own right, be tied to company culture as well. It was also interesting in the Pew Research that there was a 13% difference based on education level in terms of how people felt about how risky it was to be exposed to COVID. So that was an interesting dynamic. as well. So based on education level, and if I recall correctly, the higher the education level, the less concerned people were about it. But I think that that probably also correlates very nicely with, usually in that respect, those folks are more likely to be able to work remotely or have some hybrid work as opposed to being full-time frontline exposure situations. And finally, the savings piece. Some people just simply stepped back, reassessed their lives, stopped spending so much money. Maybe they had more in the bank, they were saving up on certain things or whatever. And so they may possibly need a little more financial incentive to come back. It's hard to say for sure, but that was part of what was going in the mix as well. So we know there's a lot of things that are really big that are also ongoing challenges that it's really hard to control. So when you think of things like in the caregiver space and the millions of women who have not been able to step back into the workforce, a big driver of that is the childcare challenge. So, and I'll be honest, I don't have a magic wand. I don't know exactly what the right answer is, but I think that's something that could be some very interesting opportunities in this space of what can you do as in business to provide people some flexibility, reassurances, coverages, something to do with childcare. Because part of the tightness of the labor market as well is you just pulled a couple million people who will, at this point in the game, never be a candidate for you. They're not even applying for jobs right now. So we just skimmed a lot of talent out of the pool, at least for the time being. So, and as much as we're calling it the Great Resignation, I personally think we're well beyond resignation. I've been calling it the Great Reckoning because I really think that this is something that both sides of the house, the employees and the employers, this is the wake-up call that says, wow, things are very different. We are in a paradigm shift, I believe, in the work world. We're not going to turn back the clock, not even my big flavor clock that I was showing earlier. We are not turning back the clock to 2019. And frankly, a lot of people do not want to go back to 2019 again anyway. So people have become much more aware and more reflective of what they want and what they don't want. They redrew that line, right, on what they're willing to deal with. I think we've all come to recognize life is pretty short and precious. Right. And things that we used to take for granted, I'm not sure we're taking them for granted so much anymore. And so I think that's flavoring people as well in terms of what decisions they're making and where they're putting their time and their energy and their effort. Priorities have definitely changed. People's priorities have definitely changed. And I think this is also a generational shift as well. So that's part of the mix. And I think we're all realizing this is what in the military terms, they call it the VUCA world, which is the volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. It's a big ball of mess out there and nobody really knows what the heck is going on. But the more you can try to look at those elements from a business perspective and give candidates or staff some reassurances that no, you don't have all the answers, but here's how we are planning and managing our way through, I think that gives your audience a lot more reassurance. I'm just noticing what Yuta's saying here. People are also react to what they couldn't do in the last couple of years. The last 10 years were not exactly great opportunity. Yeah, right. We were just starting to bounce back from like 2008, 2009, and wham. Right. Yes. And some people I'm sure are thinking too, it was never quite right. We could have done better. We could have done differently. So yes, we are compounding. Oops, I keep hitting my mic. We're compounding those situations as well. So I really think we have to, as business leaders or people who advise business leaders, we have to really change our mindset. This is not, whatever it used to fly isn't really going to fly anymore. We have to start looking towards the future and not necessarily leaning on. I hope we can at some point just turn back the clock and get things back to the way they were. I don't think a lot of people frankly want to go back to the way they were, and I don't think we will in many respects. And this can really put an employer on the back foot, right? Employees right now have leverage. If we were talking about real estate, there's always, is it a buyer's or a seller's market? Right? And right now it's a buyer's market. the pendulum has swung, the employees have more leverage. And again, what used to be acceptable, they're not so into it anymore. It's just, they're not there. So again, I'm just curious to know in terms of this, what are you seeing or hearing from staff or candidates and customers in terms of this dynamic of, you know, the employee is in the driver's seat? I mean, have you tried anything already with any level of success in terms of, from the attraction and retention standpoint? What do you see and hear when candidates come in the door, or, you know, where they ghost you and you don't hear anything? What's going on for you guys out there? If you wouldn't mind sharing in the chat, what are you seeing and hearing? That do you find that your company or companies that you're working with, are they on the back foot? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong here. What do you think's going on? Or what have you tried that you could share with the group that has worked? I'd love to know. Typing furiously. Thinking about that. Any thoughts on that one? There we go. It is a tough one. Yeah. So I said, hi, hey, Mitch, hi. Some employees are starting jobs and then leaving when they find something better. Yeah, job hopping. And again, back to an earlier point, I think Earl had mentioned how important onboarding is. Huge, because they will literally change their mind. And chances are these days, and I've heard stories too, I've been talking to people who said, like, literally the candidate backed out on the last second, like the day before they were supposed to start work, they turned around and said, I'm not coming in, I just got something better. Right? They didn't, they're not even trying to come in the door before they're hopping to somewhere else. Managers need to get used to educating someone. Lots of people are applying for a job as an opportunity and not what they did previously. Yes, people are definitely making like pretty big shifts, changes, totally new things. Lots of concern with the depth of staffing, lack of onboarding, bad culture. Here's the thing, it's kind of a two-part situation. It's like, first of all, I've got to get the right people in the door in the first place. And then once you've got them, what are you doing with them? And I see a lot of organizations where it's like, not only do they struggle on the front end to like, how do I get the right people in the door? I'm not sure how I'm getting the right candidates, or, I don't want to have another expensive mishire. We talked about that already, but here's the other thing. Once you've got them, you're not done. You're just getting started, right? And I think that can be a missing puzzle piece as well. Hire on the cultural fit and know what you can and cannot teach. Yeah, for sure. And also make up your mind about, there's, and again, we don't have a lot of time to talk about this here, but, is it about technical skills or is it interpersonal skills? I can teach a person to type. I have no idea how to teach somebody to care. I've been in this business a long time, and trust me, if I could teach somebody how to care, I would be in a different line of business right now, right? So, our high qualifications, expectations, low pay, that's starting to shift. We're noticing that a lot of organizations are starting to drop the demand at like, hey, the entry level is a college degree. Maybe we don't need that so much anymore. So some things to think about in terms of what are you really looking for and assessing on, and how far are you willing to go to develop somebody into the role if they've got, maybe the right attitude and aptitude. Earl's saying teach someone with a great attitude. It's definitely a lot easier, that's for sure. And it definitely depends on the job, and you're spot on. And I mean, million times over, and we'll talk about this here, if you don't have the right strategy and the right processes in place, you're never going to get the right people. It's as simple as that. And people are what stands between your strategy and the results you're hoping to get. So it's a really key indicator there. The other thing that's going on is, we know pandemic has created a surge of entrepreneurship. Everybody and their dog wants to be their own boss. You guys touched on this too. And this is where people are also starting to find, for some people, listen, having a side hustle, a part-time thing, doing gig work, getting involved in startups, that makes them happy. It's not, again, people aren't necessarily looking anymore for the Monday to Friday 9 to 5 company life. This is something that was modeled after what we did over 100 years ago. So why are we posting and hiring and interviewing from like 100 years ago, or running our businesses and our jobs like we did 100 years ago? We're not in 1922, we're in 2022, and so things need to shift. And this is where Etsy exploded. The reason I put Etsy up here is not as an advertisement to Etsy, but simply because Etsy exploded and more than doubled in the number of people who were out in that space, being their own boss, running their own shop. So it's a good example of where we see this happening, kind of chasing that down. And generational gap issues, Arla, you're 100% right. I can't emphasize enough, and we'll touch on generations today too. So if you're looking at ways that other business leaders are looking to invest in their employees this year, this could potentially be your competition, but this is something that, and I'll dive a little deeper into these factors in a moment, but here's some big ones that they're chasing after. Helping employees find purpose in their work. Hey, there's more to this than a paycheck. I'm not just clocking in and clocking out. That's not an engaged person. Especially younger generation workers want to know that there's passion and drive and mission and purpose behind what they're doing. The career, I can't emphasize enough, career growth opportunities. That's a big one. Inclusivity, diversity and inclusion and all those kinds of things have never been so hot as they have been in the last little while, and rightfully so. So that, what kind of, again, this goes back to culture and all kinds of things. Are businesses creating the kind of spaces that welcome and include everybody? Does everybody get a voice and a seat at the table? Or are there haves and have-nots? Because people are not very tolerant of that anymore. And yeah, competitive health benefits still matter, but health goes way beyond just your medical coverage. And the biggest factor in there that we'll touch on again too is mental health. So I'll loop back into those. But these are the kinds of things that business leaders should be thinking about. Because if other business leaders are putting their money behind these kinds of initiatives, that can give them a competitive edge. And when you're a smaller business or you're working with smaller businesses, they also need those same competitive edges, right, against the other guys. Last couple of years, I've been looking at Glassdoor. I think everybody here is familiar with Glassdoor. They run a top 100 employer survey every year. This is based on what employees at various companies said about where they work. And I just want to point out, I think it's very interesting that this year for 2022, looking at the things that people said over and over and over again, what were the high frequency touch points that people were saying, this is what makes my company a great place to be at. Benefits was at the top of the list. I'm not surprised, it's a pandemic. And benefits are often, of course, in this country tied very strongly to work status and employment. Culture is now number 2 on the list because culture is everything. 3rd on the list was people. It was interesting on the survey how many times people surveyed said, it's all about the people I work with. It's all about my colleagues, my coworkers, the people, so we're going to talk about that. Career development. How many more times do I have to bring it up? As many times as it takes. I will do it. And then flexibility and balance. So some things shifted around a little bit from last year as elements of the pandemic have shifted as well. But I think, these are 5 key indicators that we're going to look at here today that I think really, get to the heart of things that can be done and should be done to boost your chances of getting great people and then keeping great people. So, and interesting that these 2 were, brand new on the list in the top 5, just boom, they showed up this year. They moved up dramatically. And just another thing contextual to this space, if you needed help with attracting or retaining people in the last year, you were not alone. Over 80% of organizations needed some sort of help in the last year with that. Here's where it gets very interesting in my world. Only about half of companies actually have a business strategy, which is kind of surprising. And then here's where it really gets interesting. Less than half have a talent strategy. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to ask you guys, does your company have a talent strategy? where you're working and operating and living and breathing and moving and shaking, do you have a talent strategy? All right. Simple question, so I'll close it in 3, 2, 1. Boom, we're done. Wow. Most of you said, what's a talent strategy, Michelle? I have never heard of this before. Business strategy, yes. Talent strategy, no. Okay, fair enough, and I'm not surprised. Gosh, I wish I could spend the rest of the afternoon discussing this one with you guys, and unfortunately I can't. But the bottom line is, I'm going to say this much, you know, that not only, do we not, a lot of us have a business strategy, we have no idea what we're doing with our talent. And again, this goes back to my point a couple minutes ago. You've got to have a very clear idea of who the heck you need, not just today or tomorrow. You've got to think about who do you need on your staff a year from now, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years from now. Who do you need? How are you going to get them? And once you've got them, what are you doing with them? How are you making the most of that human capital in your business? And you need to make sure that that talent strategy is tied to your business strategy. So whatever it is you're trying to accomplish in your business, if your business is trying to grow by 50% in the next 2 years, what talent is it going to take to get that level of growth? How are you going to have the right people in the right places doing the right things so that you move that dial in the direction that you want? I can't talk a whole lot more about it at this point. I mean, I'm more than available after the fact if any of you want to reach out and connect with me individually and talk about this. But I can't emphasize enough, if you have no idea what you're doing with your people and they are what stands between your business strategy and the results you're hoping to get, that's a lot of blank space that needs to get sorted out. And so there's a lot of touch points there. So I think that that's a really important thing to understand and think about is what is anybody doing in the space of talent strategy? And know as well that if an organization does have a talent strategy and therefore really optimizes the people that they have working for them, they're being shown to be twice as likely to avoid the worst of what's going on in this great resignation, great reckoning right now. They're performing far better than their peers who don't have any strategy around this and don't really know what they're doing with their people or how to get people. So it is a game changer. It's a very, very important piece of the pie in terms of that. So I just wanted to share that. Okay, at this point, I'm just going to dive in a little bit further into these different elements that I was just sharing in terms of, what are the kinds of things that people are looking for that might entice them to come in the door or at least not, go running for the exit. So the core thing here right now is, benefits can boost your business. And again, understand that the benefits that a business offers are a reflection of the company's values, culture, and leadership. So again, everything's going to touch on culture. We know this, but it's like, you got to think about who do you want to attract and what might they want. If you're looking for young, straight out of college type workers, what kind of benefits do they want? They might not even care about, certain kinds of benefits because that's not the space that they're in their lives. What somebody who is in their 50s wants out of their benefits is probably going to look a lot different from somebody who's 25, right? So you have to think about who do you want to attract and what's going on out there, what will attract them. Those are some of your demographics. What do they want in order to work for you? What's it going to take to get them over the threshold with you? And look around. What are your competitors doing in the market? Whatever you can find out. What is competitive, not just, in terms of healthcare, but what are some of those other things that you could offer that might get people interested in coming in the door? If you can clearly share with candidates, hey, when you come and join my company, what does benefits package mean? You got to spell that out for people and make it very clear. Here's what our benefits are like. And so making it clear to them, here's what we offer. You join my company, here's all the benefits that you're going to get. Okay. If you have a website, this kind of stuff should be on your website. For sure. People are going to look for that sort of a thing. How do you get the word out to let people know? Because if you just say we have a really generous benefits package, I don't know what that means. And your idea of generous and my idea of generous might be very different, right? So you've got to find ways to spell that out very, very clearly for folks. Whether that's a brochure, whether it should be on your website, in your job postings. And by the way, may I mention, and this is interesting too, how many existent employees at organizations still have no clue what benefits are available to them? You might very well be paying for stuff, nobody even knows to use it, or you're not making the most of the benefits that you are offering. It never fails to surprise me how many people are like, I didn't know we had that. I didn't know I could do that. So you want to make sure you're communicating regularly, even with your existing staff. Hey, don't forget, here's all of our benefits. It's not just something that happens at re-enrollment time and then you never talk about it ever again, right? Culturally, benefits should be something that are regularly focused on. We also know that you can have as a 27% lower turnover is indicated when companies prioritize healthcare benefits for their staff. So this is a competitive space, and a lot of people want to have benefits through their employer. That's a nice one. But remember, there's a lot of different things that aren't just healthcare that can qualify as a benefit. And here's just a shopping list of possibilities. It's not exhaustive or anything, but an organization who invests in employee education, that's a benefit, right? That's definitely a benefit. And that ties back to that career stuff that everybody wants. Giving people certain kinds of bonuses or profit sharing options. Like, hey, if we all pull together and do a really good job, we all get, a reward for that effort. Other things wrapped around wellness and health. Can we give certain incentives to help make our employee? We know that healthier employees are more engaged and more productive employees than people who aren't very healthy. And these days, I don't know about you, but I think health is really top of mind for a lot of people. So what can we do in the space of and that can be around like educating people about healthy choices. Wellness can also, by the way, include financial wellness. Can you educate your staff on how to handle money better so they're not expending mental energy worrying about paying their bills? That's actually a huge benefit for folks. So, think outside the box a little bit. 401ks or pensions or, anything that shows that you're invested, like they're invested. Some people, it might be time off. They might just really appreciate like, hey, 2 weeks paid vacation, not enough. Give me more. Give me options to be flexible. Maybe I can take some kind of a leave. Maternity and paternity leaves are an obvious one, but I've seen some small businesses. I actually did a handbook project last year for a small business, and they were very deliberate about saying they offered leave of absence. We'll hold your job and you can take, a certain period of time off to do whatever it is that you want to do. And then, you're still considered our employee. You come back to work. So there will be people who may like that. Employee assistance programs offer all kinds of cool services. You get to outsource a lot of really neat stuff. Even gifts or gift cards can be a nice perk. Reward programs, maybe you tie yourself in with a local community, something that's going to be health-based. Hey, we make a deal with the local Parks and Rec division, and anybody from my company who signs up for a Parks and Rec membership gets a discount, or you get certain rewards for alignment with certain businesses in your area. Like, why not cross-pollinate and help each other out, right? Even free promotional materials and swag. Some people just love like, hey, why do I have to buy my uniform? Why do I have to buy my outfits, with the company logo on? Best free advertising you can have is let your staff show off your brand. Give them little goodies like that. It's not the be all and end all, but it definitely can go a long way. So think of benefits beyond just the medical, dental, vision, and be as robust as you can in that realm. By the way, I also advise talk to staff, or have your clients talk to their staff and survey them on a regular basis. What do they want? What do they need? Let's not assume that they all want something off Michelle's list. They might not care about any of this stuff. It might be something completely different, but you won't know unless you ask them. So I think it's well worth investigating. Any questions on the benefit side before we move into talking a bit about culture? I'm just kind of watching my time here. I want to make sure there's Q&A time for everybody as well. Thoughts, questions, suggestions, things that have worked well for you in the benefit space? You know, and you can also look at shopping around for, depending on, as a small business, who's providing your benefits, and, you know, what are your options in terms of shopping around for coverages and making sure you get the best deal for your folks too. See what else they can give you. Okay, all right. If anybody's still typing away, that's great. I'll just keep an eye on the chat and see if anything comes up. I'm going to move into culture. Culture impacts, as we've all agreed, I think, here this afternoon, culture impacts everything in your business. Everything. It's how you live and breathe. I actually looked it up. We can't say for sure that Peter Drucker was the guy who said this, but we're giving him the credit. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. And I would argue, and lunch and dinner and dessert in between, you know, and snacks in between. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. And that being the case, what are you serving? If culture eats strategy for breakfast, I mean, you can say whatever you want on paper. Bottom line is, what this means is you can say anything and everything you want on paper about who you are as an organization. But if you don't walk the walk and talk you can talk the talk all you want, but if you don't walk the walk, there's a disconnect. And the culture will always override whatever's going on your strategy. If you strategically say that we're going to be the best in the field on customer service, but in reality, everybody in your company knows that you really hate your customers and you really couldn't care less, and nobody has an attitude to go the extra mile for them, that's how they're going to live and breathe and operate. And you'll never say, oh, thank you, sure. Yeah, I love this too. I'm telling you, it makes so much sense. Culture eats strategy. Day in and day out. And I've seen it happen. And it's when we talk about toxic culture, half the battle with toxic culture is people recognize the disconnect between here's what we said we are or what we do, but here's how we actually function. That level of disconnect does not go unnoticed. People notice. Now, how much they do about it, I don't know. Some people have a pretty high threshold of tolerance for dissonance and disconnect. Some people not so much. And I think increasingly dissatisfaction that workers have is like, you know, when companies leaders are going to say things like, oh, you know, our employees are our most important asset, but then they feel treated like they're the least important asset. I don't care what you say or how much you want to give them a kumbaya hug. They're not going to believe you, right? So you really got to watch that. What are you serving for breakfast, lunch, and dinner when it comes to culture? Because it is eating your strategy, whether you know it or not. So I'm back to this one again, and I'm going to put it in context of culture for you. So if we're going to talk about these elements in growth opportunities, do you have the kind of culture where everybody gets proper training for their job? You know, like, don't assume that they know what, you know, does everybody have a development plan? And some of you might be going, what's that, Michelle? Oh, you need a development plan. Do you discuss performance beyond the usual check-in or corrective action? You know, a lot of people feel like the only time they hear anything from bosses or management is either when they're being yelled at for doing something wrong, or an annual performance appraisal, which almost invariably feels unfair and like a raw deal and pretty useless. It's just an exercise in futility. So just some simple things culturally. What are you doing to really drive home the point that we're invested in our people and that we're going to make sure that we've got them knowing how to do the right things the right way where we work? What about, you know, in terms of the inclusion, do you model the way with respect and inclusion for everybody at work? Does the business actively seek diversity? Like, you go out of your way to say, hey, we really want to have, you know, our customers are diverse, our community is diverse, we need to reflect our customers and our community. Does anybody in the business tolerate harassing or bullying behavior? Because the second that's tolerated, that's where your culture eats your strategy. Your strategy says we have a policy. We're all mutually respectful around here. But in reality, we let people violate that policy and violate that strategy, and nothing happens. We tolerate it. I mean, I've heard just horror stories of, people who are very badly behaved in bullying, and the top bosses will say, yeah, I know, but that person sells a lot of stuff and brings in some big money for us. So just deal with it. Just work your way around it. But they're very important to us because they bring in a lot of money. Oh, okay. I know what counts around here, and it's not respect or whatever. It's money, right? People can do that kind of math. Finding, the health and well-being thing. Do you treat staff as holistic human beings? I heard a really cool thing the other day in a conversation I was having with somebody who said, we're so busy focused on human doings, we're not thinking about human beings. Do we do things like say, hey, I recognize that, yeah, sometimes people get sick, or sometimes people have a bad day, or sometimes people need a break. Or are we promoting healthy options and choices? Or do we just say that healthy people are important to us while we stock the vending machine with all the cheap junk food that we can get our hands on? It's those kinds of things. That's culture. That's culture. Absolutely. One of my all-time favorites was all the surgeons in a cardiac department at a hospital who were very keenly interested in eating a lot of pizza. And I thought, that's ironic. Good for them. And then the purpose in work, I can't emphasize enough, and this is especially for something for younger generation workers coming into the workforce. Are your people connected to your mission and values? Do they even know what they are? Do they have any idea how they fit into the mission and the values? Do they have the same values? Because if they don't value what the company values, not going to work. Yeah, you're only as strong as your weakest link, girl. You got that right. Is every single person in the organization clear on how they impact the bottom line with the customer, whether that's an internal or an external? How do I serve the end result that we're trying to get to here? If I don't know and I don't feel connected to that, I'm not going to care nearly as much as the person who does. The closer you get them to the customer and the mission, the better. And again, does everybody know where they fit into the big picture? Oh, I'm just another worker bee in the hive over here. Nobody notices or cares when I'm not in. Oh, yes, we do. Because when you're not in here and you're not working, things aren't getting done. And then I can't get my job done. And then the other person over here can't get their job done. Dominoes fall, right? Do they feel that? Do they really know it, feel it, get reminded, talk about it, hear about it? People really badly, especially those younger generation workers, they really want to know that they are connected to something that is greater than just a paycheck or themselves. So from a cultural standpoint, again, look at these opportunities for investment in what can you do to drive some of these key indicators that really bring people into the space. Even just I'm just going to do a high level, Psych 101 kind of thing. Think about in an organization, where probably most of us are familiar with Maslow's hierarchy. You start at the bottom of the pyramid. I need my biological safety. I need my biological stuff met first. I can't work very well if I'm starving, exhausted, homeless, thirsty, whatever. Okay. So from a business standpoint, there are things that can be done in that space. And if you don't take care of it, you're not going to have great workers. Safety comes next. Do I feel safe at work? Do I know that I'm not going to be put in danger and I'm not going to come home with missing limbs or broken limbs? This goes to things like harassment, the work environment, safety. The next one, belonging. Do I feel like I belong at the organization? Do I, or do I get ignored? Do I get picked on? This has to do with inclusion, work relationships, team dynamics. What are you doing to foster those things to make everybody feel like I want to come to work? The esteem needs are around confidence, achievement, and respect. What is an organization doing around reward and recognition? Giving people responsibilities, maybe getting promotions. I want to move up in the world. How do I do that? And the tippy top, the self-actualized, I'm going to be the best that I can possibly be as who I am and what I'm doing in this organization. Giving them the opportunity to be creative, problem solve, achieve their full potential. This is where the development and the growth and the progress comes in. If an organization is not working on clear ways culturally to provide these things and make it very consistently clear to their staff how this works, it's not really going to work very well. And a lot of people will get stuck at the bottom of the pyramid. It's very hard to get people to those top 2 tiers when they're too busy worrying about what's going on at the fundamental level. So just culturally something to think about in this space. Another way we could look at it is in this realm, the kinds of things that will lower dissatisfaction at work are things like what kind of conditions do people work in, the relationships they get to have with their bosses and their coworkers, the policies and rules. What are the guardrails? Okay, those kinds of things. And this is where the money comes in. Okay, we're back to the money for a second here. Yeah, I might be less dissatisfied with my job if you offer me more money. But I guarantee you one thing, it's not going to make me more satisfied. Doesn't that sound counterintuitive? Huh. These things will drive down levels that, like, I'm not happy about the working conditions. This place is filthy and noisy and dirty, or I'm not happy about my supervisor is a jerk. Okay. If you fix those things, it might lower the dissatisfaction. But the drivers that actually get people satisfied, happy, and I put the word purpose here deliberately, these are the things that increase satisfaction. It's not the money. It's not having a better policy. It's not having prettier furniture or a nice break room with a ping pong table. That's not what makes people satisfied at work. Here's what does: giving them growth, advancement, responsibility, recognition, the opportunity to achieve something and get known for it. That's the stuff that culturally drives engagement. So in these spaces, even as a small organization, there are things that can be done to drive the cultural impact and make it like, hey, if you can speak to a job candidate, or you can speak to your existing employees, or do things or make changes that lower the job dissatisfaction and raise the roof on the satisfaction, they'll be more likely to be into you, and they'll be more likely to stick around with you, right? And also understand, and I think this is really important, morale is not the same as culture. You can like tacos all you want. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're into Mexican culture, okay? Tacos are not Mexican culture, all right? So in the work world, how does this translate? Putting nice things in the breakout room, or pretty furniture, or painting the walls, or giving them a ping pong table and stuff like that, that can boost morale, but that's not really going to get to the heart of things going on in the culture. So just beware that you don't put trappings on things that don't really help. Yes, tacos, I know, mid-afternoon snack. Who doesn't want that? It's a good picture, nice and close up, okay? Next up, we've got our people. By the way, if you've got any questions or comments around the culture piece, please, just for the sake of time, I'm going to keep moving. But if you've got comments, ideas, suggestions, anything around that, do let me know in the chat. And Mitch is voting for burritos instead. Yes, very good. You all are making me hungry now. Stop it. Stop it. Okay, let's talk about the people, because the people are what stand between the strategy and the results that you or an organization that you're working with are trying to get. Okay. And in order to attract great people, you have to know who you want and who you need. You got to get very clear. You have to have an up-to-date, solid job description for starters. If you don't even have that, that's a good place to start. And as we've touched on, you have to have alignment and fit with any individual between the job that you're asking them to get done, the team in which they're going to operate, and the company as a whole. Okay, so there's tasking things that they have to be able to do, like, can you do engineering or not? Can you, whatever it is that the job is. And then it's also about and knowing that you can do this job. Are you the right kind of person to fit in the way that we operate? Okay, I know this is not exactly news to anybody, but I can't begin to tell you how many times I've run across people who really aren't actually concretely thinking about it as they could. This goes back to your talent strategy as well, 100%. And might I advise, please watch out for hiring the mini-me versions of yourself or others in your employ. I see this all the time, small business owner ends up, I want to go getter and somebody who's just like me. And then they hire that person and hate their guts. They make them crazy. You know why? Because they're you. And you didn't need another you. You needed somebody different to get the job done who complemented you, not replicated you. So really think about it in that space. Keeping great people, that's a bit different. You need to, these days especially, and this always honestly should be the case, you need to work just as hard at keeping them as finding them. Again, once you've got them, it's not like, oh, game over, we won. I got the employee, now I can just kick back and relax and they're going to do their job. We are just getting started. Back to talent strategy. You need to nurture and grow people. You need to constantly make sure that they are aligned with the mission, the vision, and the values. Do they feel connected? Because that connection is going to keep them engaged. You need to engage and motivate constantly. Like you need to talk to them regularly, all the time. How's it going? What's going on? What's working? Where are you stuck? What would you do differently? All those kinds of things in that space. You've got to do those things. Got to do those things. And may I suggest, nip any bad behaviors in the bud and do not tolerate poor performance or poor behaviors. If you want to keep great people, you need to make sure that you're not keeping not great people. I had a conversation several weeks ago with a couple of business owners who were talking about how there were two people that were working at the front desk, and one person constantly was like, rah, 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 and complaining about everything to the second person. We'll call them A and B. A was constantly complaining to B all the time. B was going to management and ownership and complaining that A it was negative. And they didn't appreciate constantly having this person, beacon off and complaining about everything that was going on. And, in the course of the conversation, I asked, well, do you have disciplinary things? What do you do? And so on. And, it kind of came clear that, they didn't really have anything sorted out about how to handle a situation like that. And I said, the absolute thing to be thinking about in all this is which is going to hurt you more. Is it going to hurt you more to possibly have to fire A, who's beacon off and being negative all the time? Or is it going to hurt you more when B decides to quit on you? Which performer do you want to hold on to and which performer do you want to lose? Because I guarantee you, people don't want to work with other people who make their lives miserable. They don't want to work with people who are toxic. They're far less tolerant than they ever have been or will be. They have choices and they will look elsewhere to find somebody who will, say, hey, enough's enough. We're not going to behave this way. So if you have policies, you have expectations, you have standards, you got to make sure that everybody's enforcing them. That's how you start helping keep great people, is surround them with other great people. Lift all boats, right? Great talent wants to be with other great talent. No doubt about it. Also thinking about whether or not you're an equal opportunity employer. When you're posting, are you making it very clear that you understand and you legally and anybody involved in interviewing and hiring knows these categories and knows what to do and what not to do about them? And may I argue, is this about culture or compliance? Are you doing it just because you don't want to get in trouble with the law? Or are you doing it because your culture truly reflects the fact that you value people of all kinds of different backgrounds and so on and so forth? Because compliance is a check the box event that never works. And culture will eat your strategy, right? You guys are saying, I listen to the complaints, clarify, verify, rectify, and then go for the attitude adjustment. Yeah, I mean, it's process, right? It's not necessarily just on the spot we do it, but if you turn a blind eye and allow it to keep happening, and David, I think you're right. Most people will go for law, not culture. I just don't want to get in trouble. I don't want, the law says I have to do it. You can't be lesser than the law, but you can certainly be better than the law. And so think about it from is it really part of the DNA of the organization that this is how we roll? And Because anything other than that, if it's just compliance, you're constantly going to have to remind people about it and beat them over the head over it. And that's exhausting, as opposed to making it, we do this because this is the right thing to do, and this just is how we operate. Know as well that 19% lower turnover is a result of companies that are more inclusive. So that's a good, healthy return just on that effort. A couple other things I'll quickly mention. I do want to make sure I want to move on. Just a few things to think about. 4 forces of engagement. These are the 4 core areas to think about: job fit, manager fit, culture fit, and team fit. There's a lot of different things that you have to coordinate. And I'm just going to skim through very quickly and just say the job fit is the technical stuff. And again, how suited are they for the work? Manager fit is how well they're going to work with the person who's in charge of them. This is a make or break relationship for a lot of people, because we know that people tend to quit managers. The cultural fit is whether or not they're going to fit in with the organization, whether those are the written rules or the unwritten rules that you live by, how you operate and show up in the world. And the team fit is whether or not they're going to fit with the other people that they work with in whatever department or capacity. This goes back to talent strategy again, but it's from a culture, it's from a people standpoint and a cultural standpoint. How do we get people engaged? We make sure that they're fitting in all of these criteria. That's going to make them stick around a lot longer than people who are a misfit somewhere and feel like I don't belong, or this is a horrible experience for me, or I'm dissatisfied. I don't feel the fit. I'm not feeling the love. Right? So you gotta think of that. And go figure, a whopping 42% lower turnover when companies have the right people in the right roles. When you hire right, and then you nurture those people for the jobs that they're doing and the jobs that you need them to do. 42%. Will the deck be provided? Oh, that's a good question. I honestly hadn't even thought about providing the deck. Let me think about that. We've touched a little bit on generations, and I just want to point this out. This was some interesting data that came out recently from LinkedIn. And I just want to point out something here in this realm: current and potential employees. And we've got 4 generations working together right now. Notice that on new skills, promotions or new responsibilities, new function, pretty high scores for several generations in the work world. Are you going after these kinds of things? Are you thinking about, how do I get the kind of people? What can you say to people about giving them new skills, promotions, responsibilities, or moving them into different functions if that's what they want? Knowing, by the way, that the boomer generation are the ones that are closest to retirement. So the bulk of the workforce is going to be made up of Gen Z, Gen Y, and Gen X. So this is that strategy piece that says we got to look forward. What's coming down the pipe as some people are retiring and other people are backfilling in? What are they going to look for that's going to be different? I think that's really, really critical too. All right. Career development. People are craving this like crazy. I'm super excited by it because, of course, that's really my bread and butter. But I think it's super important that companies, I think, have kind of put this on the back burner in the past, and it needs to be on the front burner and lit up. Because again, workers are looking for purpose. They really want to know, especially these younger generation workers, they really want to know that, like, hey, we're on a mission to do, what are we doing here? How are we operating the world? What are we here to accomplish? And they want growth. And guess what? Career development gives them purpose and it gives them growth. Boom, 2 in 1. It's a BOGO. It's a BOGO deal if you do it right. So knowing that, and this was something that came out of a Forbes article that somebody shared with me just last week, 76% of employees are more likely to stay with companies that offer continuous training. Hey, that's some low-hanging fruit in my book, right? And here's the other one. Over half of people in the same survey said they know that they need additional training to perform better in their roles. The question is, are they getting it? Right? Hey, I know I need help. I can't, people can't just sit back and assume that they're going to train themselves or teach themselves. Or, again, it goes back to, I think it might've been Earl, or forgive me if I got this wrong, said, who's the weakest link, right? They're only as good as you're going to make them and let them be. So know that development is a big dang deal for people these days. People want to get skilled. They want to get upskilled. They want to continuously learn and grow and develop. And so if you can offer that, that's a standout. This learning and development has now become a major differentiator in the market, for sure. And the way I've said this for years is you wouldn't build a house without a blueprint, right? I mean, you could, but I don't think it would go over very well. You shouldn't really have employees without a plan. And again, make sure that everybody's plan is ultimately aligned with that business strategy and your business goals. Hey, every single individual in an organization should be moving in the same direction towards fulfilling the goals of the organization in whatever capacity they work in. Give them a path, give them a blueprint. How do I get from here to here? And what are we going to do to get me there working together? So, you want to have a really cool house with a really great blueprint. You need a blueprint for your career. And you don't want to skip out on that. A few ideas for development. I mean, again, there's lots of options. This is kind of like benefits. People can develop in a lot of different ways. You could offer tuition reimbursement coverage. That would be very generous. That would be a great benefit. Send them out, give them workshops and seminars. Get them signed up for certain classes, whether it's like the local community college classes, whether it's online classes, who cares? As long as it's good quality education, they, offer to let them take a class or a certification. Get them a subscription. Hey, is there an industry magazine or something that they could get their hands on that keeps them learning what's the latest and greatest going on in that part of the business world? Mentoring is a great way for people to learn and develop. Both the mentor and the mentee get a lot of learning and development out of those relationships. Give them newer stretch assignments. Hey, try something you've never tried before. We'll hold your hand and let's see how it goes. Is there a way to do something from an apprenticeship level? Possibly. Observation. Hey, do some job shadowing and observe how does somebody else do their work. Memberships to professional organizations. Those kinds of all of these are great ideas and opportunities that a lot of people will jump on to say, hey, these give me ways to get exposed to other people out there and other ideas. And always just make sure that whatever they're doing and learning, somehow they're bringing it back to the business for you. There's your return, right? Share with us, hey, you went to this conference. When you come back, we'd love to have a summary presentation. What did you learn? What did you find out? What could we do over here that you learned about that'll make our business better? Win, 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 all over the place. And this is an old adage that I stand by through and through, true and true. If you think it's expensive to develop someone and have them quit, what does it cost you to not develop them and have them stay? Philosophical thought for the afternoon. I mean it. I promise you, it costs an awful lot more to not develop people than it costs to develop people. Truthfully. All right, into the final stretch. A little bit about flexibility, balance, and integration here. Bend so you don't break. Again, we're human beings first and foremost, not human doings. What else do you have to live for besides work? Surely there's something that you look forward to outside of work, and recognizing that for an awful lot of people, it's not I live to work, it's I work to live. Recognize people from where they're coming from and that they have outside interests. They have other things that they're passionate about and they want to do. And maybe work, by the way, is the means for them to get some elements of what they want outside of work. Yeah, you want family and you want to spend time outside. I mean, everybody's got something that they want to do. Don't assume that they love work the same way that, workaholics do. And being a workaholic is not a badge of honor by any stretch. I kind of touched on it before, and I'm going to bring it up again because it bears repeating. We are not only in a health crisis these days, we're in a mental health crisis these days. Whether people on your staff or in your client organizations want to say so or not, nobody can bring their A game when they're sick, worried, tired, or distracted. So think about how you or the organizations that you work with are supporting holistic health and well-being, and particularly in the mental health space, because this is a big dang deal right now. This pandemic has been really hard on people. It doesn't entirely seem to be going away. It's, there's a lot of stuff that's going on up here. There's a lot of churn and concern. And if we're not doing something to support folks around that, they can't possibly be the best that you want them to be on the job. They just won't. And no, it's not just up to them to figure it out. I think smart employers recognize that, we spend half our waking lives at work. It's worth a little time and effort to support those folks in the work world or beyond to get what they need. So I'm just going to leave that out as a challenge. But, the ability to do that, and thinking in the space of, absenteeism versus presenteeism, both of which are problematic. Absenteeism is people are saying, I need to take sick days, unplanned sick days. They're not showing up for work for whatever reason, because they literally are physically sick, or they're just really sick of what's going on at work and they're mentally checking out. Presenteeism is different. This is my body's in the building, but I'm not really here, and they're disengaged. And I'm just going to say, and we all see it. And I'm just going to ask you to sit back and consider to yourself, which is worse and why. Is it worse to have somebody gone from the building or kicking around in the building, not really getting anything done because they're really not into it? Either way, you're not getting the performance that you're looking for. But this is an interesting space that sometimes that flexibility and that balance can help reduce the reasons why people disconnect and disengage at work, whether they remove themselves entirely or they just don't care and they're goofing around. Very quickly as well, I'm just going to say, if you have a flexible work schedule or hybrid or remote, here's the bottom line. This came out of some very interesting literature recently. Do not have people in the building for anything they can do somewhere else. If there's a number one pushback right now on hybrid work, is too many people feel they're dragged into the building for stuff that they could have done. Like, why am I in the building to be on a Zoom call? Okay. So if you can do this, make it meaningful. Know that a lot of younger workers do want a level of interpersonal interaction in person if they can. Think about the opportunities you could use in that space to offer social activities, to team build, collaborate, celebrate, and bottom line, how do you make it so that they'd rather be at work than somewhere else? Okay, but a big pushback right now in the flexibility space is, hybrid's great right up until I have to come to the office for no good reason. 33% lower turnover, by the way, if you can find any way to make any part of your business remote friendly. And then I'm just going to leave it with, for some people, actually, it's too much flexibility. Unpredictable schedules are a nightmare for certain workers, especially when you think of back to childcare, caregiving, scheduling, trying to fit everything else into their lives. For some people, the idea that I don't know from day to day or week to week when I'm working, that's the biggest turnoff, and that's the biggest challenge. So the more you can be predictable in scheduling for some people, the better off they're going to be. I'm going to leave it with basically saying none of this is in a vacuum. All of this is tied to leadership. I said this at the beginning. Leaders are fundamental in making all the decisions that touch all of these categories that we talked about today. So the big challenge is getting the leaders to understand what some of these dynamics are and what they can make choices and decisions about doing something about them. All of these things, there's lots you can do, and they don't necessarily have to be expensive. Changing your culture doesn't mean you have to throw a pile of money at it. It means you have to throw a pile of effort at it. So I know we're running down to the bottom of the hour. I thank everybody so much for joining me today on this. I'm open to any questions or chat or discussion that anybody may have.
Beautiful. That was a great presentation, Michelle. Yeah, let's go ahead and give her a hand, and please unmute yourselves, put in the chat whatever questions that you might have.
Absolutely. Did I miss anything? Has anybody got something they want to, share with the group? And again, if you want to have a further conversation with me, here's all my connectivity stuff. If anybody wants to chat further, I know we had to hit a lot of highlights really fast. So
yeah, if anyone needs help with the talent strategy.
Yeah. I got talent strategy tools, let me tell you.
Are you seeing anything within circles where they're doing kind of more of a casual recruitment so that they're kind of building up their funnel more so than going direct to go and hire? Or are you seeing anything within communities that are looking at that medium level of hiring?
So casual, like casual in terms of we're not hiring full time. We need you when we need you. I just want
No, more so like they want like what we're seeing. I know that I'm seeing on LinkedIn that we're seeing more networking being done on LinkedIn. And is there anything that you're seeing within communities where they're doing something similar, where it's not an all job fair, but more so where they're positioning companies and doing things as a community as far as promoting jobs and work?
Nothing that specific or deliberate. No, that doesn't mean it's not happening. The one sense that I do have is networking has become a real big driver. So the idea of, being able to know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody who might, could be available. And so there's a lot more of that connectivity on that level that says, hey, I'm not necessarily posting a job, but I just happen to know somebody who works in that space or might be available. And again, this drives back to a lot more of those things around gig work, the gig economy, project-based things where sometimes people make themselves available, not because I want to be your full, like I work in the fractional space. I'm nobody's full-time employee. So I think you see a lot more of that within those networks, but I have not heard specifically of a deliberate community around what you're talking about. But I think that's a very cool idea.
I think the nearest I've seen to it has been just within our chamber events. They'll normally set some time aside at the beginning or the end if they have any employers in the room who want to talk about what any efforts or open positions or things like that. But I've not seen anything, and I wonder if that's not a gap.
I honestly, just like I think that we're still, that we're in this paradigm shift where we're still struggling with the idea that let's stop operating like it's 100 years ago or even 50 or 40 years ago. It's like, I think even in the realm of how a lot of people post and hire for jobs. I mean, yes, there's tech, you can go out to different websites and post your whatever and assess your candidates and all kinds of things, but we still have a fairly antiquated approach to how we position jobs and how we look for candidates. And a lot of people are not very well educated in that space either, in my experience. They don't know how to do job descriptions well. They don't know how to post well. They don't know how to interview. They don't know how to screen. They don't have their toolbox to make sure they're not making blunders and mistakes. They cheap out on various things, and then they pay a heck of a price on the back end when they get the wrong people, and then they have to I still see a lot of that going on. Like anybody who's going to touch candidates in an organization better be trained on how to do it.
Hey, Michelle, it's Mitch.
Hey, Mitch.
Hey, sorry, I missed the first, 15 or 20 minutes or so.
That was the best part. Sorry.
Well,
all the cool fun stuff happened before you joined us, Mitch.
Good. And did you kind of position this presentation as a high-level overview of the series that we're doing?
I did not, so I'm so glad that you brought that up. That was going to be one of the other things I was going to point out is that so Mitch here and I have been partnered together for ages now. He's with the College of Lake County and the SBDC. We are running a 7-week, 7-session series that dives even deeper into what I shared today. So if any of you are interested in joining me for that, we just kicked off this morning. We're deeper diving. It's Thursday mornings from 9 to 9:45. Every Thursday from now until the end of June is when we're going to run the series. So if you or anybody you know would benefit from that, they can go out to the College of Lake County website and register. And
we'll make sure that everybody has access to register for these events.
Awesome.
We'll
Yeah.
send it to all of you.
Yep. Thank you for bringing that up, Mitch.
Yep, you bet.
Awesome. Any other comments, suggestions, questions, anybody?
Any last questions, comments? That might be it. We certainly have your contact information. And so we'll make sure we send it out to the group.
Awesome.
Thank you for presenting. This has really helped us get strategy and structure together so that we can help our small businesses create jobs, retain jobs, and so forth. So thank you very much. And, I'd love to partner with you in the future again. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much. I so appreciate the opportunity to share this with everybody today. And I appreciate everybody joining in for the ride and participating. And again, I'm more than delighted to connect one-on-one with anybody if you'd like to do that too.